All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nutrition with Elena. And today we're going to be talking about simple swaps, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm in the right class. I will turn it over to you, Elena.
Hi, everybody. Thought it would be a good time of year to talk about little swaps that we can make in our baking and in our cooking meals, all sorts of swaps that we can make. So I am going to do two recipes today. So we're going to get started with a banana bread recipe that just kind of highlights some of the swaps that you can make. And I'm actually going to soften my butter because I didn't get a chance to do that yet. And the butter recipe, we're going to do a quarter cup of butter and we're going to just put that in. I'm just going to put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. I also have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. All right. So our banana bread has a lot of good swaps. It is kind of lower in added sugar than most. We've swapped in some applesauce for some of the fat, and we're incorporating in some whole wheat flour. So I'm going to put the sugar in here now. So we're doing a quarter cup of sugar. And for those of you who bake, like, you know that that's pretty small for one loaf of bread. Usually it's calling for a cup or more. A quarter cup ends up giving it about 5 grams of added sugar per slice. So pretty reasonable, still well under the guidelines where it could fit in. So, we say the guideline is like under 24 grams a day for women and under 36 grams per day for men. So let's get our butter out. And if you wanted to lower the saturated fat even more, you could sub in more applesauce for the butter. So that's a way we can substitute in pureed bananas. We'll use obviously some bananas today, but you could also sub in pureed pumpkin and applesauce for fat in recipes. Okay, so we're going to do cream our butter and our um, sugar, and we're going to put some applesauce in too. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of applesauce. Now we're not going to be able to see what this looks like. It does take quite a while to cook, so it's going to be baking for about an hour. But you see in the picture what it looks like. So I'm just going to cream that. I'll start my black eggs. Doing a tablespoon of egg and 3 tablespoons of water. So we're going to do 1 whole egg and 1 flax egg just to highlight how we can do an egg substitute if we want. And you can do this with ground flaxseed or ground chia seeds. So you're doing 1 tablespoon of the ground seed and then 3 tablespoons of water. And then what that does is it'll just form a gel. So that will be acting as a binder, just like our egg would. So just like the egg, it acts as a binder. So let's just whisk that a little bit with a fork. Then we're going to let it sit to the side. While that's sitting, I'm going to prepare my dry. So we're going to do our flour. So we're going to do 1 cup of whole wheat flour. Now, if you want to do more, you could use like a whole wheat pastry flour. That actually works a little bit better in baking than just a whole wheat flour. But we had whole wheat flour that I tried in this recipe and it worked well. So that's what we're going with. So I'm going to do 1 cup of that. And you could always play around with even doing a little bit more. You can even substitute out all the flour for gold. Okay, so we did a cup of whole wheat, and then we're going to do 1 cup of all-purpose. It's nice to have a recipe like this time of year, if you're having company or, some type of like going to a breakfast where you want to bring something. This is a really nice option. If it's just kind of you're making it for you, you can certainly freeze some of it. And, that things like this do freeze well and thaw nicely. You can even make this into muffins instead of a bread. And just to highlight with the way we're doing it, we said there's 5 grams of added sugar per slice, a little bit of protein, 4 grams of protein, and then 2 grams of fiber. So if you would incorporate in more whole wheat flour, there would be a little bit more fiber in it. Okay, so I'm gonna stir that. And then we're going to add our baking soda. So we're doing 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Great. I'm gonna mix that up, and then this is gonna just be waiting to go into our mix. All right, so let's get our egg ready. So we're gonna do 1 egg and then 1 flax egg. And then we're just gonna add our regular egg and our flax egg in one by one, and we'll stir it. We'll put the mixer on as it's going. We're gonna add in our bananas. So they're slightly ripe. I just happened the day, like, I got them last Friday, so I would maybe prefer them to be slightly a little bit more ripe, but this will do. And if you don't have a mixer, you can certainly do this by hand. You're just gonna mash these up and mix them right in. That's going, and now I'm going to add in my Greek yogurt. So we're gonna do a 1/2 cup of plain non-fat Greek yogurt. So using the Giant brand, which I like. Really like the Giant brand, and then also the Aldi brand of this. Turn this off to get it opened. right, and then we are going to just add in our vanilla extract. So we're going to do a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Great. And now we're just going to add in our flour mixture just until it's combined. Safely add this without having it spill. And this we're going to do just until it's combined. That looks pretty good. Mixture here. Gonna move it around a little bit. Now with having lower sugar, and we'll talk about, the substitutions we can do, but lower sugar when you have a little less of the browning that you might have on breads and muffins and things like that. But otherwise it's not really affecting anything. You're getting some sweetness from the fruits still. You still have enough sugar in there to give it, some flavor and bring out, kind of it tastes like a sweeter bread type of flavor. So we really don't need a ton of sugar when we're baking. Great. And then I'm just going to put it into my baking stone pan that I use. Put it in here. You can see it's kind of a nice and thick batter. And again, this will be just a really nice banana bread that's not going to kind of like spike up your blood sugar and crash it like typical banana bread does. It's going to be a little bit less of that happening. And you can certainly make it vegan if you want to. You can sub out the Greek yogurt for like a plant-based yogurt. Obviously, you can sub out all the flax eggs, and you can just sub out the butter for a 1-to-1 applesauce. But again, something easy to make tasty. Great. Okay, I'm gonna get this thrown in the oven, and again, it's gonna bake for about an hour until it's done. All right, I'm gonna get this big thing moved out of the way so we can make some space for our next recipe. Okay. We're gonna do our talk first, but I do want to kind of do one piece of the first recipe. I will say that I did already make my noodles, so I made my whole wheat pasta noodles already before we got started. But I want to get my cashews soaking in hot water. So let me get that recipe opened real quick. So we're doing the vegan Alfredo. So we're going to do 1 cup of raw cashews. And I did get my water boiling before I started the talk today. I'm just going to pour that over top of my cashews so they're nice and soft and ready to blend. Let me just get my tray for this. Great. All right, so let's get started on our top. It always likes to block where I need to be at the top. There we go. There we go. All right. Great. So we're going to just kind of like go through some swaps that we might make during our day, even outside of baking and cooking and things like that. So there's some breakfast carbohydrate swaps we can play around with, right? So instead of maybe white toast with butter, we might do like whole wheat bread with nut butter, or maybe we do a sprouted grain bread. So I think we've talked about Ezekiel bread being a sprouted grain bread, and that tends to be a little pricier. We can find that in the frozen aisle at the grocery store, like in the natural foods aisle, or, just maybe in a general bread aisle. But I also like the Aldi's Knock Your Sprouts Off bread. And that one is similar to Ezekiel, a lot cheaper. They keep it in the regular bread section, but it does still spoil quickly because it doesn't have many preservatives. So I do tend to keep it in the freezer and then pull a piece or two out at a time. We could swap from a sugary cereal to an oatmeal or a muesli. I really do like muesli, and that's a picture of the Bob's Red Mill brand on the bottom. Muesli is basically rolled oats, seeds, and some maybe like dried fruits. Typically doesn't have any added sugar in it. And I find that that can be nice for something like I like to talk to people about maybe making like a yogurt bowl. So maybe you do some plain Greek yogurt and you add that in. Maybe you also add some chia seeds in and you have like a pretty nicely balanced breakfast. Or you just do that with maybe a little bit of unsweetened soy milk on top, if you're moving more towards plant-based or do a plant-based yogurt. But again, muesli is kind of nice, and I find that it works well for people that maybe don't like hot oatmeal. So it's kind of a different way to get some oats in. Oops. My goodness, this new mouse I'm using is very sensitive. And then another option, instead of that giant bagel with cream cheese, right? That's like equivalent to 4 slices of white bread. Maybe we transition to a whole wheat English muffin with, again, like a nut butter or something like that. Nina gets what I'm saying with those bagels. Although like where I live, the bagels aren't great, whatever, but they said that there's a place that opened up a couple miles away that has like official like New York bagels. So I might have to indulge and try one of those. And then some lunch carbohydrate swaps that we might make instead of a white sandwich bread, again, like the whole wheat or the sprouted grain. Instead of a canned soup, we might choose a frozen soup. Oftentimes the frozen soups are lower in sodium. So I really like this Tabachnik brand. I don't know if you guys have come across that. I've probably talked about it before, but they have like a low sodium option and then kind of a regular option, but the regular option is still lower sodium than most of the canned soups that we find at the grocery store. Um, and then maybe instead of a white flour tortilla, we move towards a corn tortilla or like a whole wheat one. I always recommend just kind of like checking sodium on the flour and the whole wheat ones just to try to find one that's a little lower. Oh my goodness. And then some dinner carbohydrate swaps. So we might, instead of white pasta, do some whole wheat, which is what we did tonight, chickpea or lentil pasta. Instead of French fries, maybe a baked sweet potato or roasted potato. And better yet, if we kind of cook and cool these like the potato, the barley, like we talked about, it creates that resistant starch, or even the pasta. If we cook and cool it, we're creating some resistant starch, which then acts as a prebiotic fiber. So it fuels that good bacteria in the gut. I also recently saw that potato, like a roasted potato, is very high on the satiety scale. So they kind of did a study where they looked at which foods help keep us satiated. We talked about that last week, and I recently saw like the potatoes pretty high on there. I was like, that's interesting. I liked that. And then this morning I was reading my son, he has to get through a couple books still for this trimester for school. So I'm having him read The Little House in the Big Woods, the Laura Ingalls Wilder book. And they were talking about like the potatoes in the pockets for keeping them like as hand warmers when it was cold out. It's like, I need to try that. That would be better at these freezing cold softball games than these junky little hand warmers they have that don't work right. And then we could switch from white rice to barley. So we've talked about barley before. So even if it's pearled barley, we still have a lot of that fiber throughout. So most of the grains you take off the bran, and most of the fiber goes with it when they're processed. But barley actually has that soluble fiber kind of within the grain. So even the pearled has a good bit of fiber in it. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I can't deal with this mouse. And then some beverage swaps. So we could go from soda, obviously not a great choice, but then we could do maybe a flavored seltzer. We could do sparkling water with a splash of juice. If people are going out to dinner and they really like to get soda, but they're trying to get away from soda, any place that has a bar will always be able to do like club soda with a splash of cranberry or a lime, lemon, whatever. So that's something kind of fun and exciting still that is just going to be lower in, the sugar. I went somewhere this weekend, got a mocktail, and it like went through all the ingredients, and simple syrup was one of the ingredients. So it's just like, can you just hold the simple syrup? So you can always make these swaps to again reduce that added sugar specifically. Instead of energy drinks, maybe like some green tea with electrolytes, right? The kids today just seem to be drinking a lot of energy drinks, and it's not great because some of those have like 2 and 300 milligrams of sodium in them. So just kind of being aware if you have young people in your life that that's not the best thing for them. And then juice. So instead of like straight juice, we might do diluted juice. Like we said, maybe like the seltzer or club soda with a splash of juice, infused water, tea with frozen fruit in it, just to kind of give it that nice juicy flavor without all of the, more concentrated calories. And then some protein upgrades, right? So instead of sausage or bacon, in the morning, maybe like you're going to do some eggs or turkey or tofu, tempeh. So some different ways to kind of incorporate them in when you might normally do like one of the processed meats. Same thing with like lunch meat. Instead of like turkey lunch meat, maybe you have some fresh cooked turkey or chicken, that you're incorporating into your sandwich. Instead of frying meats, baking, grilling, air frying works well. Instead of having animal protein every day, maybe having a meat-free day or more, and those days kind of using tempeh, tofu, beans, lentils as your protein source. And then fat swaps. So mayo, instead of mayo, we might try avocado or hummus, or maybe like a Greek yogurt if it's something that would work for. Instead of butter or shortening, we might do olive oil. We might mix butter with avocado or canola oil, just to kind of spread out like the butter. You still have that flavor. When you mix it with olive oil, I feel like you can taste the olive oil. It's a little bit strong. But if you mix it with these other two oils, you still kind of can taste the butter, which is nice, but you're kind of spreading out that saturated fat a little bit and not having such a concentrated amount of it. And then baking swaps. So we did quite a bit of that today, right? Like we said, we can go 1 for 1, replacing butter or shortening with applesauce, banana, or pumpkin. White flour, we could sub a portion for wheat flour 1 to 1, or like the wheat pastry flour again, has a little bit of a lighter, fluffier consistency. If we want to swap out eggs, we can do flax or chia eggs, like we talked about, the 1 tablespoon to 3 tablespoons of water. And then sugar, we can reduce by 1/2 or more, even 3/4. For snacks and sweet swaps, instead of cookies, we might transition to apple slices with peanut butter, chips, roasted chickpeas as an option instead of chips. So we're still getting that crunch, that little bit of like salty flavor, but we're going to have some protein and fiber with it. Instead of yogurt with added sugar, we might just do like the plain yogurt with fruit. And then just kind of touching on the hidden sugars again, because like this is everywhere, right? So when we're trying to kind of hone in on that, let's pay attention to that. So looking at nutrition labels, focusing on added sugars, which to me is wonderful that we have that now, because for so long we didn't have added sugar on labels. Um, Sugar in healthy foods, so granola, smoothies, yogurt, like really kind of honing in and looking at what we're buying. And there's always options in all of those categories that are better choices than some. So, you just have to look at the labels and kind of see what's best. So when we're looking at those labels, we're obviously looking at the serving size first, how many servings per container we can look at. And then we're looking down at this added sugar. And again, for women, we say like 24 grams or less per day, and then 36 grams or less per day. I mean, the dietary guidelines say about 50 grams per day just across the board as a guide or less, but I don't know. I feel like that's a little on the high side. And then some flavor boosters. So using herbs and spices instead of salt, maybe adding some citrus or vinegar for brightness, trying garlic, onion, or chili flakes, and flavoring food naturally with our herbs, our spices, without sodium or sugar if we can. So pantry swaps. So we can read labels and choose 5 grams or more of fiber per serving, or 3 grams or more. And five can, between 3 and 5 grams or more per serving is a good guide. Keeping frozen fruits and veggies on hand. I feel like that's great, especially this time of year, especially for the fruit, because fruit this time of year is pretty expensive when you buy it fresh and it's not the best, right? So the berries aren't great, but frozen fruit can really kind of fill in those gaps for us. Swapping white rice for quinoa or brown rice can be really good. Uh, Replacing sugar-laden sauces with sodium or with low sodium or homemade versions. And then some time-saving things. So plan ahead, stocking, the things that will help us with shortcuts. So some frozen things, have some prepped things, work on batch cooking. And then we have our usual recipes. And I think I touched on cooking for cooking for peanuts last week. So that is a really good one. It's a dietitian who really hones in on higher protein, higher fiber, plant-based meals. So a really great one to check out if you haven't already. Great. Any questions on the swaps? All right.
Elena,
Yes.
I am incredibly lazy, and I must admit that there are times when I have resorted to like a box mix for the banana bread, and I
Okay.
always swap out the oil for applesauce. And I
Oh,
found the single serving cups are perfect.
there you go. Yes, they are.
I
And
just
I
dump one of
know.
those cups in, and yep.
Yeah, they are. I usually do have those for that.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Awesome. Uh,
Okay, Elena, I had no idea you could swap out applesauce and you can make an egg out of flax.
yeah.
Oh, so that's really cool. I can't wait to like try that. So can I do that for almost any baking recipe? Like
Mhm.
if I'm making oatmeal raisin cookies, I could do the flax in water, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
one
then one egg.
tablespoon.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, you can replace all the eggs. So 1 tablespoon of ground flax with 3 tablespoons water
Okay.
replaces 1 egg. So you could do that for both eggs. Like you can replace all of your eggs. Like
Yeah.
I was using it a lot whenever the eggs were like super expensive too, because like you didn't want to waste your eggs on whatever, banana
Yeah.
bread or something.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. And my favorite place to get, I know I wish Aldi's would just like pay me for these sponsors I'm giving them all the time, but I usually get my ground flax at Aldi because it's the cheapest there. And same for chia seeds. Great. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, we're gonna get started on this recipe, which is so good. I like surprised myself with it. I'm like, this is really tasty. I was telling Erica that I just finished up um like what I made of it last week, this for lunch today. So I'm like, ooh, now I get to eat it again and it'll be hot. It's definitely better like hot right when it's cooked because it does kind of thicken up a little bit. Um, but it is really tasty. So we're gonna get started with that. But like I said, I did already make the pasta. Now we're just gonna blend the cream sauce before I start sauteing things. So let's get that blended. And you can also add whatever like veggies you might like to this. Maybe spinach or like a broccoli Alfredo, whatever. Um, just in the interest of me trying to get organized, I just kept it pretty simple. All right, so we're gonna drain out these cashews and I'm gonna add them to my blender. And I always get happy when I have a recipe that's liquid enough that I don't have to struggle with my food processor. The blender will work just fine for this. Right, so we have this. Then we're going to do 1 cup of unsweetened soy milk. Now we're going to put some nutritional yeast in. And for those of you that haven't used nutritional yeast before, it it's it gives like almost that savory flavor to things. Some people use it as like a kind of like a cheese replacement. It kind of gives that feeling of mouth taste of cheese sometimes in recipes. It is heavily fortified in vitamin B12 and some other B vitamins. So specifically for people who are consuming more of a vegan diet, it is a nice option. The only contraindication I've really seen with it is people that have Crohn's disease probably shouldn't have it. But other than that, it's good. And I can't remember the mechanism why they shouldn't have it. But I think it's a nice way to flavor our foods. So I'm doing a tablespoon of that. And then I'm just doing a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So just a tiny bit of salt. And then also a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I thought I had, oh, here it is. And then the same for onion powder, about a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. So we're gonna blend this up. And I will say, I was using my old NutriBullet that I had for about 20 years. And I went to a yard sale this past summer and I saw this there for 25 cents. It's like, I'm going to get this as a backup just in case. And then what do you know? My old NutriBullet decided to die, and I was happy to have this one ready to go. But the quarter at the yard sale was a pretty good deal. All right, so I have my pan heating just because we all know it takes some time over here. I have some really large garlic cloves, so I'm just going to do one of these. So basically just going to saute my garlic in some olive oil just to kind of start with a little bit of like a little flavor pop when we add the mixture in. We're just going to saute in about 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Let's talk about a swap, because finding a replacement for Alfredo sauce, like this is a good swap for sure. Alfredo sauce typically has a ton of saturated fat in it. So cashews can be a really nice way to kind of add creaminess to things in a plant-based recipe. If you're having that kind of cheesy type of a taste with the nutritional yeast, the creaminess of the cashews. So it's a really nice combo. I'm gonna saute this for just a couple seconds because, as you sure know, the garlic really sautés up fast. And I am going to start putting this in. I'm just going to let it heat. And as it heats, it is going to thicken a little bit. So I may add some water just to loosen it up a little bit. Grab my water. Just going to stir it as it heats. So you can see this texture, right? It looks like Alfredo sauce. You definitely want to make sure you're using unsweetened soy milk and not the original. I think we've talked about that, but the original ends up having added sugar in it of any of the plant milks, which is very annoying. Great. So as it kind of thickens up, I'm just going to add a little bit of hot water to it, just to, again, keep it a little bit looser. couple tablespoons, basically. But yeah, I mean, you see that the texture is nice, it's thin, so you can kind of, let's get a little bit of pasta and we'll spoon it over top of it. Whole wheat pasta that we made, and now we're just gonna spoon some of this on top. You have your Alfredo sauce. And like I said, you can do some veggies with this, whatever you enjoy. Great. And then our banana bread's just gonna bake for a little bit longer, like another half hour. So, I'll have some nice snack tomorrow. Great. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one. I was just thinking back on the first segment where you used, oh, I know what it was. Like snack substitutes, and you mentioned nut butters. So there's one I had a question on. Have you ever heard of Wow Butter?
Yeah, that's like the sunflower seed
I
butter.
think it's more like a soy butter or something.
Oh, okay.
Does that work too?
I'm sure I'm not super familiar with that specific one. I haven't seen like a soy butter before.
Okay.
I can look into it though and let Erica know. I've definitely seen I think that brand is the brand that sells like the sun butters and things, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I can let you guys know.
Okay.
I like looking into things that I'm not familiar with. It's always how I learn.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Great. Anything else?
I want to know where that garage sale was, where you got that for 25 cents. I mean, that
Right? I
you
know.
don't find that every day.
Sometimes you just land at the right one. I tell the kids, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose when I drag them with me to yard sales. They think I mostly lose, but I beg to differ. Yeah, good. Yeah, and I forget what we're doing next month, but I'm sure it's something like festive, maybe.
Plant forward eating. So
Eating. Okay, there we go.
you get to come back to find out how we're going to make that festive.
Yeah, that makes something be made festive in that.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much for this series, Elena. I just get so much out of it every time. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Nina.
Yes, so do I. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll try to get a question or the answer about the butter stuff.
Yeah.
Do some plant.
Wow now or wow? Wow butter.
Wow. WOW.
Okay, perfect. Yep, I'll keep you posted. All right.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. See
Have
you
a
next
good
time.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, everybody, have a great Thanksgiving.